It was not a normal day at the palace. The skies were heavy, as if holding back tears. The air was quiet, and even the birds that often flew around the old trees stayed still. People stood in silence outside the gates, dressed in dark colors. There were no loud voices, no cheerful laughter, just calm waiting. Everyone knew something important was about to happen, but no one could explain the feeling. It was like the whole world had stopped for a moment of history. Then, through the gates, a black royal car slowly entered. It moved quietly, almost like it didn't want to disturb the silence. All eyes turned. No one spoke, but many held their breath. Inside the car were two people everyone knew. But that day they looked different, stronger, softer, heavier in spirit. Prince William sat on one side, his face calm but serious. His eyes looked tired, not from sleep, but from emotion. Beside him sat Catherine, Princess of Wales, her posture straight, her hands gently folded in her lap. She wore a deep navy coat with simple pearl earrings, nothing flashy, nothing loud. She looked royal but also very human. When the car stopped, a royal guard opened the door. William stepped out first. He nodded respectfully to the crowd, his jaw slightly tight. He was holding himself together for everyone else. His role was not just as a son or grandson, it was as the future king. Then slowly Catherine stepped out behind him. The cameras clicked quietly, but no one shouted her name like they usually did. Even the media felt the weight of the moment. Catherine stood tall, but her eyes said everything. She didn't look left or right. She didn't wave. She just looked forward, and for a moment it was as if time had stopped. They walked side by side. The palace steps were not far, but every step felt like a chapter, a story, a memory. It wasn't just about attending another royal event. It was about showing up, standing strong, and honoring something greater than themselves. When they reached the top of the steps, other members of the royal family were already gathered. The monarch stood just ahead, calm, graceful, wearing a soft expression that only a few could read. Everyone expected a quick bow, a respectful nod, and then silence. But what happened next would be remembered forever. Catherine paused, just for a second. Her hands remained still, her face quiet. And then slowly she stepped forward and bowed deeply. It was not a short bow. It was long, graceful, full of meaning. She bowed in complete silence, and in that silence, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't a usual royal bow. It wasn't done just because protocol required it. It came from somewhere deeper, from love, from pain, from memory, from respect. Even the monarch, who had stood through thousands of ceremonies, who had seen generations of royals come and go, froze, just slightly. Her eyes locked on Catherine, and for a second, everything went still. William stood beside her, his hands tight at his sides. He didn't move. He didn't need to. His wife was speaking, without words. She was remembering everything that came before, the queen who had once guided her, the public pressure she had faced, the pain she had hidden behind soft smiles, and the strength she had found in silence. The crowd outside didn't understand the full meaning, but they felt it. Some gasped, some cried. No one said a word. When Catherine rose from her bow, she didn't speak. She didn't look around for approval. She stood tall, calm, and steady. The monarch gave the smallest nod. It was royal language, silent, controlled, but filled with deep emotion. Catherine took her place beside William, and they both walked inside. That single moment, just seconds long, would be played again and again on screens and in hearts. It showed something powerful. That real strength doesn't need words. That, sometimes the most royal thing a person can do is stand in silence and let their heart be seen. Catherine's bow wasn't just for tradition. It was for every quiet tear, every private battle, every promise kept behind palace walls. And the monarch, who had seen so much, understood that more than anyone. After William and Catherine disappeared inside the palace, a heavy silence remained outside. People who had come just to see them were left in awe. Some stood with hands over their mouths, others quietly wiped tears. That single bow had done something that words could not. It reminded the world that royalty was not just about crowns and ceremonies. It was about heart. And Catherine had shown hers in the most graceful way possible. But inside the palace, the feeling was even deeper. Every step she took felt heavier now. Every hallway she walked through held memories. The room they entered was filled with close family members, high officials, and a few royal staff. All faces turned toward William and Catherine as they came in, but no one said anything. It wasn't the moment for greetings. William nodded at a few, but his hand gently touched Catherine's back, guiding her with quiet support. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. She needed him close. She had been strong outside, but inside, her chest was full of emotion. She looked around the grand room. The tall windows, the golden walls, the chandeliers, all so beautiful but also full of history. She could almost hear the footsteps of the queen who once walked there, the queen who had once told her, "In silence, we show the world our deepest truths." Catherine remembered that line. It had stayed in her heart from the very first week she married William. The queen had welcomed her with calm kindness, never loud, never forceful, just present. And now, standing in that same space, the emptiness left behind was impossible to ignore. William stood tall, but his eyes kept going to Catherine. He knew her well. He knew how deeply she felt things, even when she didn't say much. They had shared many moments of joy, but also many nights where tears were part of their journey. People often saw them as the perfect couple, the future of the monarchy. But behind those royal smiles were two people who had grown stronger by standing beside each other through storms. Today was another storm, quiet but strong. A small bell rang. It was time to move into the grand hall for the remembrance event. As they walked in, the room fell silent again. People rose from their seats. Catherine walked slowly, her chin lifted but her heart racing. William walked beside her, like a shield, but also like a partner. At the front of the hall stood the chair once used by the queen. It now stood empty with a small white flower placed on the seat. That simple flower was more powerful than any statue. It was a reminder of who had once sat there, guiding the family with wisdom and quiet strength. Catherine's eyes landed on the flower and her breath caught. For a moment she felt her knees weaken, but William's hand lightly brushed hers and she found her balance again. They sat down, hands folded, hearts heavy. As the speaker began to talk about the Queen's life, Catherine felt tears building behind her eyes. The words were beautiful, stories of kindness, leadership, and love, but they also brought back personal moments that no one else knew. She remembered sitting with the Queen during her early days as a royal, nervous, unsure. The Queen had poured tea and said simply, "You're doing better than you think." That one sentence had stayed with her for years. Now, as the speech ended and music began, Catherine closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't cry. She simply breathed deeply, holding all her memories close. William looked at her and saw the emotion she was holding in. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His fingers gently touched her hand. Just once. That was enough. The event ended with everyone standing. One by one, they walked past the empty chair, each bowing or pausing in their own way. When it was William and Catherine's turn, the room went quiet again. Catherine stopped in front of the chair, looked at the flower, and gave the smallest nod. No deep bow this time. Just a look filled with respect and love. William stood beside her, his face soft, his eyes moist. Together, they honored the woman who had shaped their path. As they left the hall, the silence behind them spoke louder than any music. That day wasn't about words. It was about remembering, about honoring, and about the silent strength that Catherine had shown to the world. After the ceremony ended, Catherine walked through the long palace corridor, her steps soft, her mind still holding the weight of the day. William stayed close behind her, silent, respectful, watching her carefully. The palace was quiet now. Only the sound of their footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Every portrait on the wall, every mirror, every chandelier felt like it was watching them, reminding them of the legacy they were carrying. Catherine didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was full of meaning. They entered a private room where only a few close family members were allowed. It was a sitting room the Queen had often used, warm and peaceful, filled with personal memories. The same armchair she had once favored was still there. Catherine stopped for a moment and looked at it. It was untouched. A soft cushion on it still held the shape of the woman who used to sit there and smile gently. Catherine's eyes softened. She didn't sit. She simply stood, staring quietly. William slowly came beside her. He had not seen her this quiet in weeks. She had been strong in front of everyone. She had smiled when needed. She had bowed when the world was watching. But here, in this private space, she didn't have to be perfect. She could be real. William reached for her hand, and this time, she took it. Her fingers felt cold. He didn't let go. A family staff member came in quietly and handed Catherine a small envelope. It was old, cream-colored, and sealed with a royal crest. Catherine looked at it with surprise. It was written by Her Majesty some time ago, the woman said gently. Catherine took it slowly, her hands trembling. William stepped closer. He could see that something important was happening. She opened the letter carefully, afraid it might break in her hands. Inside was a handwritten note. The writing was gentle, graceful, and familiar. It was from the Queen, addressed to Catherine. She read it slowly. It wasn't long. It simply said, "Dear Catherine, there may come a day when I am no longer beside you. On that day, remember this. Strength is not found in crowns or titles. It is found in kindness, in patience, and in quiet love. You have all three, and you will need them. Yours always, Elizabeth." Catherine didn't speak. Her lips trembled. Her eyes filled with tears she had been holding for too long. She clutched the letter to her chest and finally let herself cry. Not loudly, not with panic, but quietly, like the kind of tears only a strong woman cries when no one is looking. William didn't say anything. He just put his arms around her and held her close. In that moment, the future king was not a prince. He was just a husband, comforting the woman he loved. Outside the room, people were moving, preparing for the next part of the day. But inside, time had stopped. Catherine sat slowly on the edge of the chair near the Queen's favorite one. She kept the letter in her lap, her fingers gently running over the words again and again. She was remembering so much. The first time she had met the Queen, how nervous she was, how unsure she had felt in her early royal days, how the Queen had taken her hand during a quiet moment and said, "You are exactly where you are meant to be." That voice still echoed in her heart. William sat beside her, his hand still holding hers. "She loved you," he said softly. Catherine nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I loved her too," she whispered. Her voice was quiet, almost broken. "She saw me before I even saw myself." That truth hit deep. Catherine had come into the royal family, not born into it, but chosen by love. And yet she had earned her place not with words or loud actions, but with patience, quiet strength, and deep grace. That day when she bowed, when even the monarch froze, it was because that strength had finally shown itself in a way that no one could deny. William leaned forward and gently kissed her forehead. "You honored her more than anyone else could," he said. Catherine looked at him, her eyes filled with both sadness and calm. "I just wanted her to know that I listened, that I learned, that I'm ready." Outside, the sky had started to change. The clouds were moving, the light was softening. It was still a heavy day, but something had shifted. In her silence, in her tears, and in her bow, Catherine had done what the Queen had once told her. She had shown the world the power of quiet love. The evening sun had begun to set. spreading a soft golden light across the palace. Everything outside looked calm, but inside, William and Catherine were still sitting in the quiet room, holding hands. The Queen's letter rested gently on Catherine's lap, and her eyes stared at it with deep love and respect. Her heart was full. She had cried. She had remembered. And now, she was slowly finding peace. A soft knock came at the door. A royal aide stepped in quietly. "The balcony gathering will begin shortly," she said with respect. William gave a small nod. Catherine stood up slowly, her movements graceful, though her emotions were still heavy. She looked at the Queen's empty chair one last time, then placed the letter inside her handbag. She pressed her hand to her heart and whispered something under her breath. Maybe a thank you, maybe a promise. As they walked through the corridor toward the balcony, Catherine felt a strange mix of sadness and strength. She wasn't walking as just the Duchess or Princess. She was now something more. The Queen had passed on more than a crown. She had passed on trust, wisdom, and silent courage. William sensed this too. He looked at his wife and saw something in her eyes that was new. Not pain, not fear. It was calm. It was readiness. The balcony had always been a place of celebration, of waves and smiles. But this evening, it was different. The air was quiet. The people gathered outside the gates were waiting again, holding candles, flowers, and pictures of the Queen. They weren't cheering. They were simply looking up, waiting for a final glimpse of the family who carried their hopes. When William and Catherine stepped out, a soft sigh moved through the crowd. Not loud, but full of emotion. They stood still for a moment, side by side. The royal family joined them, but all eyes went to William and Catherine. They were the future now, but they were also the present. Catherine looked over the crowd, her hand holding the edge of the railing gently. Her face didn't show pain now. It showed something even stronger. Peace. The kind that comes only after walking through loss with your heart still open. A small child in the crowd waved a white rose. Catherine's eyes locked on her, and for the first time that day she smiled. Just slightly. Just enough. William saw it too. He leaned closer to her and said something no one else could hear. She smiled again, this time brighter. That one moment lit up the balcony more than any light could. It was as if, in that second, the whole country breathed again. Later that night, after the family had stepped away from the public, William and Catherine walked alone in the palace garden. The night was quiet, stars twinkled above, and the flowers the Queen had once loved were blooming softly under the moonlight. Catherine stopped by a rose bush and touched one of the petals. "She planted these," she said softly. William nodded. "She always said roses are gentle but strong. Just like you." They didn't need to say much. The silence between them was full of understanding. They had faced something hard, something personal, but they had faced it together. William looked at her and saw the girl he had fallen in love with years ago, now grown into a woman of deep grace and quiet power. She had not changed into someone new. She had grown into the person the Queen had always believed she could be. They walked back slowly, hand in hand. Inside the palace, the halls felt a little warmer now. The pictures on the walls didn't feel like history. They felt like family. Before going upstairs, Catherine turned one last time to look at the hall. She whispered softly, "Thank you." Not to anyone she could see, but to someone she would always carry in her heart. That night, before they slept, William placed the Queen's letter in a small wooden box beside their bed. He locked it gently. "For the children one day," he said. Catherine nodded. "So they'll know who she was and what she gave us." The world had witnessed a powerful moment, but what the world didn't see were all the small moments behind it, the tears, the silence, the memories, and the love. That was the true royal story. Not just a bow, but a journey. Not just grief, but growth. And in the quiet strength of Catherine's heart, the legacy of a queen continued to live.